So in 1940, George A. Malulis, a professional scouter in Detroit, Michigan, was elected the national chief after running on the platform of having the area fellowships. In 1941, many of the North Carolina lodges had area-type meetings called Region 6 fellowships. And y'all, we touched on this a little bit last week. At the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, it's known that Tomochichi and possibly some other South Carolina lodges were represented at this fellowship. The first Area J fellowship was held in 1945 and was hosted by Lodge 200 of Jacksonville, Florida. Of the Dixie lodges, only Tomochichi was known to have sent delegates to this fellowship. In 1946, Area I meeting was held at Morrow Mountain State Park near Albemarle, North Carolina, but little is known about this meeting, which we talked, Rick Horn touched base on all that last week as we discussed. It is believed that several of the Area Z lodges sent representatives to this meeting and may have promoted the Area Z Fellowship to begin the following year. We do not know that a patch was issued for this event. The first, now this is where we start to get in, guys, to where Dixie Fellowships came from. The Area Z meeting was held in 1947 at the original Camp Barstow and hosted by Muskogee Lodge in Columbia at this meeting. It was reported that each lodge was expected to send 4 candidates for the ordeal. Each lodge candidate was required to pay a whopping 40 cents for a felt sash. A banner was presented to each lodge that had a representative in each event. To qualify, the lodges must have had members present in all 5 discussion groups and must have had at least 2 ordeal candidates and 2 brotherhood candidates inducted. This program was repeated at the 1948 Area Z Fellowship held at Camp Hananwo, hosted by Unalehi Lodge. Another program featured in 1948 was a showing of the movie Pueblo Boy. The total cost for the weekend was $3. Another interesting aspect of the first Area Z Fellowship was the guest speaker. In 1947, Frank Dick, Deputy Region Executive, and Gene Kellogg Hale, National Executive Committee, were present. In 1948, Robert H. Henstead, National Chief, was a featured guest speaker at the Area Z Fellowship. It is also interesting to note that ordeal and brotherhood ceremonies were held at every fellowship and also was the vigil honor. I think this was a common thing around. I know our lodge and all the other lodges, when you went to the Dixie Fellowships up until they broke it out, that's where all the vigil honor ceremonies were conducted, were at your area fellowship. It was obvious that in the early fellowships were meant to inspire the lodge leaderships to work on improving their lodge programs back home. In that respect, hasn't changed much over the last close to 75 years of the Dixie now. On a humorous note, members were encouraged to bring scouting-related items to swap during swapping period. Were scheduled throughout the weekend. Some things haven't changed much, have they? And then, guys, we ended up with a lot of realignments, and that's what we're going to go over and show the patches, and I'll talk a little bit to you now about the hard stuff, what's hard to come by, what's easy to come by, the market out there for our Dixie Fellowship memorabilia. So this is the humble beginnings, guys. This is some of the things I read to you. It'll talk a little more about J. Rucker Newberry. He is the gentleman that actually came up with the name Dixie Fellowship because it was held in the South, and everybody also knows that Mr. Rucker was also the gentleman behind the first OA handbook. Charleston, South Carolina, Unalehi Lodge was the first, so that's where they came up with the name of Dixie Fellowship, and it stuck. These are all the original lodges that make up our Dixie Fellowship, and you're going to see the alignments here coming up soon. This is the Area Z. These are the first lodges that attended our very first called Area Z Fellowship back then. It was called Area Z from 1945 to 1949. And they included these lodges. And guys, you see the 2 with the asterisks. Of course, Broad-Winged Hawk came Egwatia D in 1950. So they were with all of us for quite some time before they got moved out. So here are the first 3 Area Z patches. The first Area Z Fellowship was held at the original Camp Barstow in 1947. That is still a hard patch to come across in mint condition, guys. Most of them have the tab cut off at the top, and of course it is silk screened on felt. So to find one, these used to go for $3,000 to $4,000 a piece, but I would imagine in today's market you could probably pick one up for about $2,500. The 48 and the 49, Charleston and Greenville, still hard to find. You don't see them a lot. And again, some of the ones, the button loops are cut off of them. They are going for between $700 to $800 a piece now. Those used to sell for about $2,000 a piece. Then in 1950, we got changed from Area Z to Area 6B. And these were the original lodges of Area 6B. The 1950 fellowship meeting and the 1951 OA 6B fellowship meeting. And then the first held in Charleston, Unilehi Lodge, 6B, the first event to be called the Dixie Fellowship. Of course, if you notice, there's no rebel flag in it as of yet, but it is coming. All three are hard pieces to come by. The Area 6B, the first patch to say Dixie on it, those used to go for about $3,000 to $3,500 a piece. Now I've seen those go out in the market for about $1,500 to $1,800. 6B, 1953 to 1972, we picked up good old Esquahupa then. The Esquah was formed in 1964, so they came on board with us and joined the Dixie Fellowship. Then you had the first year where you had the Dixie flag. And yes, what you know, it would be good old Charlotte, North Carolina. I have a letter in our archives from Gene Grimes, our staff advisor at the time, who Camp Grimes is named after here in Mecklenburg County, our camp. A note to the lodge chief that told him, remember at the COC meeting that when in designing the patch for the 53 Dixie Fellowship, that the rebel flag should be the focal point of the patch. And from there until 1997, it showed up prominently in every Dixie item that we produced as far as Dixie memorabilia over the years. According to the documentations, there was the same amount of patches made for the 58 that it was for the 59 Dixie. But the 59 is hard to find, and those used to go for about $5,000 a piece. The market has dropped down, and you can probably get one of those today for probably about $2,000 to $2,500. This is where we started to branch out and doing other memorabilia. There's a few of these years here. The 67 was the first year that we had a neckerchief. And there was also a leather neckerchief slide. 65 was the first year that we did a mug. Then we got changed to section SE3B. All the lodges stayed the same. We just changed our numbers, and we were that from 73 to 81. So those are the Dixie patches for those years. Then it happened. One of the saddest days of my life as a youth, when I heard they were going to take me from Dixie and stick me with the rest of them North Carolina lodges, and I had to start hanging out with people from like Greg Grimes. But we got moved. Esquah got moved, and Itabap, we all got moved to SE7. And at that time, they moved Tomochichi in to take our place. During these years, this is where the memorabilia really started to get heavy. We started producing hat pins. We started producing participation pins. If you look at the 97 Dixie there with a blue heron on it, that was the first year we did a participation pin. And if I am not mistaken, we have had a participation pin every year since then for doing what you needed to do on Saturday, participating in training events, going and seeing dance competition, and just doing the things you should do at an area fellowship to receive a participation pin. But there's also was starting to do a whole lot of staff memorabilia and different kind of stuff. One of the most controversial ones is that one right there from 1984. There was a special COC patch done for that year that caused a lot of problems because everybody couldn't get one. And if I'm not mistaken, Mac, that was the last year we allowed to do a special patch just for the COC. It wasn't a good thing, but at the time, everybody thought they were doing something good. And one thing about Mac McLean, for y'all who don't know, Mac's on with us tonight. Mac is our section advisor, and Mac has tried to keep our memorabilia on a level key that everybody that goes to Dixie has an opportunity to purchase everything that's available for that weekend, and nobody has a special privilege for anything. So there's not anything done special for the Council of Chiefs. SR5, 1993 to 1997. As you guys see, we picked up Egwa Lodge 129, and they also picked up Moogo Lodge 243 and Akano Lodge 358. So we were branching out all over the place, getting a little bit deeper south there. Section SR5 from 1998 to 2001 was the second happiest day of my life when I heard that Catawba Lodge was going back to the Dixie Fellowship. It was a rejoicing time that we were able to reunite Catawba, Eswahupade, and Itabap back to the Dixie Fellowships, and we've all been together since 1998 again. This is where you're going to see the change come into play here, gentlemen. If you notice, guys, the 1998 was the first year that they said that we could not put the rebel flag prominent in the patch any longer. So the SWA designers, if you look at it, you can still see the flag in the background. It just doesn't have the stars in it anymore with the colors. And if you scroll over to the next year, that one down there that Alikula Kula hosted, you see the bars, but there are no stars in it. And the next year, was Solly hosted, it completely sort of went away. I mean, you can still see, we had them still in the state flags that they used for that design. And then Itabap sort of did one with the crossing there of the lodge numbers. But again, the prominent stars and bars, like they were in the old days, were a thing of our history. No, we could no longer use them in our patch designs. In 2002 there, Unilehi hosted the 50th anniversary Dixie, and boy, that was a great party, guys. I mean, we had food and cakes. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was a great celebration. The last Dixie held, named Dixie, was done by Eswahupade there in 2019. They were the last lodge to host the Dixie at Camp Bud Shields. This year was called COVID, Carolina OA Conference. The first Dixie staff neckerchief was done there in 1965, hosted by Santee. Hard piece to come by, gentlemen. Most of all these staff neckerchiefs are hard to come by, but these are just some of the examples of some of the neckerchiefs. One of the hardest is our neckerchief there in 76, and it had red staff down in the bottom corner. That neckerchief, if we sold one, but they don't sell because you can't find them, probably go for an easy $3,000. All the other staff neckerchiefs are pretty reasonable. The other hard one, other than the 65, is going to be the 75, hosted there by Skyuka. Okay, Dixie staff patches. These are some of the staff patches throughout the years. Most of the staff patches are fairly easy to come by. The gray border one from 81, Solly Lodge hosted, that's sort of a difficult one to come across. You don't see that one a whole lot. Or the yellow border one from Skyuka. That's another difficult one to come by. The rest of them, they're pretty easily obtained. They're not too bad. All right, these are just some more of the Dixie staff patches. The specialty issues, these are ones in the early days, guys. They used to, when we give out awards on Sunday for everything, before they started doing supplemental plaques and stuff like we do nowadays, they simply glued patches onto the plaques, and that's what was given out. And those are some of the hardest Dixie patches to obtain because there wasn't a whole lot of extras done unless somebody peeled them off of their plaques to trade. They're just...
You mentioned that there were just as many 59 Dixie as the 58 made. Do you know how many were made?
Yeah, 400. Up until our Dixies really started to explode with participation, you only took 10, 15 people to the conclave, to Dixie, from your lot. Back in the old days, there was nothing, because you like can't steer. Now, Belton Dining Hall, whopping 60 people in it. That's it. I mean, that's all you could get in that dining hall.
So it looked like some of the Dixie neckerchiefs, the staff was added on to the regular.
They were, Larry. Chief Neckerchief made our staff neckerchiefs, but there is a rumor out there, and again, nobody's ever been able to say yay or nay on it, that the 75 Skyuka one was hand sewn by some mother that took, I don't know the number, and sewed staff into the neckerchiefs on the 75. So that is a rumor that's out there. It don't make a difference whether she sewed it or not. It was still issued to their staff members for being on staff. When I talked to the gentleman from Chief Neckerchief, the original owner of Chief Neckerchief, when I was doing all my history, because for a while I was ordering my troop neckerchiefs from Chief Neckerchief, because guys, y'all know the beautiful job that Chief did on neckerchiefs. I mean, they were gorgeous. And I asked him, I said, listen, the 75 and the 76 almost looks like, one lady that knowed how to do cross stitching. That's what they were done. And he goes, no, Larry, it's the way we loosened up on the Shifley machines is the way it sewed those like that. Because you're right, Larry, it looks like, peel one, purl two, stitching on them is what it looks like.